Jurickson Profar, welcome to Atlanta. Yes, welcome on in to Braves Today for Friday, January 24th. Your source of news, notes, and updates on your Atlanta Braves. I'm your host, Lindsay Crosby. You can follow me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Crosby Baseball. You can follow the show on Twitter, Braves_today. We have a Facebook page and Instagram as well. And you can find all of my written work, bravestoday.com. That's the Braves Today Substack, as this is both a podcast and a newsletter. And folks, I was a little bit nervous about what we were going to talk about on Friday, and the Atlanta Braves came through for me with the Thursday afternoon news about 5:30 Eastern time. Was it official by the team, broken by Robert Murray maybe a couple minutes beforehand. The Atlanta Braves have signed outfielder Jurickson Profar to a 3-year deal worth $42 million. It is Atlanta's first major league contract given out this winter. Believe it or not, this offseason, that's the very first one. Profar is going to make $12 million in 2025. He'll make $15 million in both 26 and 27. There is no club option attached at the end. And yes, Jurickson Profar is giving 1% of his salary to the Atlanta Braves Foundation. But this is a big deal, right? We talked about this, the December 24th show, when we looked at free agency and we said, who is left? I think the very first player we mentioned in the show and the topic of that thumbnail was Jurickson Profar. He was by far your best option remaining in free agency. And it's really funny because we talked about, he's a really good hitter. I thought a lot of his changes were sustainable, and so does Alex Anthopoulos. We'll get to his clip in just a second. But I don't quite think I realized exactly how high the Braves were on Jurickson Profar. We had a chance on Thursday night to talk to Alex Anthopoulos. In his own words, let him tell you how impressed they were with Jurickson Profar when they were doing their free agency work.
Yeah, we assessed the free agent market, trade market, beginning of the offseason, based on last year, of course. We had Jurickson as the second best free agent bat, just based off the season last year. That's how good we thought he played and performed. And look, off seasons, there's so many different areas you can make your team better. You guys have asked me in the past, is there one specific area we had room in the rotation, bullpen, and to get a bat. So we never go into an off season with, we have to do X. It's, what deal makes the most sense for us. And getting a switch hit bat with on-base skills and contact skills. And look, we really buy into, he made some significant swing changes from 23 to 24 with his lower half, added a leg lift, opened up his stance a little. His exit velocities are up quite a bit. And if you look at his career, he's always been talented and number one prospect. And, the walk rate's always been there. The strikeout rate's always been there. He's had some decent seasons at times, and then he's had some rough seasons. But, the only part of his game that hasn't come is power.
And this kind of mirrors what we were talking about in that Christmas Eve episode about all of the changes that Jurickson Profar made over last offseason. He was working with Fernando Tatis Sr., the father, obviously, of Fernando Tatis Jr. of the Padres. Makes sense he would go out there. I do want to point out, though, that's the same person that worked with Ronald Acuna Jr. before his MVP season. I'm not saying Jurickson Profar is going to be the MVP in 2025. I'm just saying that, obviously, Fernando Tatis Sr. understands how to fix a hitter. My goodness, that man is good. And for Profar, he had career highs in just about every category you can imagine, right? Hit 280 with a 380 on base and a 459 slug. Those are all career highs. The slug was close. He had a 458 in 2018. He had 24 home runs. He had 85 RBI. Those were all highs. He had 76 walks. That was a career high. 158 hits. That was a career high. 94 runs. That was a career high. You can keep going here. The point is, he had the best season of his career, and kind of like I talked about in that December 24th show, kind of like Alex Anthopoulos talked to us last night about, a lot of those improvements seemed to be sustainable, right? It's mechanical changes. And AA did go into a bit more detail about some of the stuff that he did. If you want to, by the way, if you want to hear all of AA's comments from last night's press conference, we have a playlist on the YouTube channel that is Atlanta Braves press conferences, right? We have the Tim Hires, the new hitting coach. We have his press conference. We have the International Free Agency press conference that they just finished. We have AA before the winter meetings. We've got this press conference. A little bit after this podcast comes out, we'll be uploading Jurickson Profar's press conference. We're meeting with him in the time between me recording this and when this will go live around lunchtime on Friday. So you can go back and listen to the entire press conference from AA. But I think the big takeaway here is they really like Jurickson Profar entering the winter. But the way that the Braves always do things didn't change here, right? They said, this is the amount that we're comfortable paying Jurickson Profar. We'll keep in touch with his people. We'll keep working on his stuff when he gets to the right price. And that's something that we've talked about too, is as players get closer and closer to free agent or to pitchers and catchers reporting to spring training, they'll take slightly shorter deals, or they'll take less money overall. They'll give up things that they were asking for, like a player opt-out or whatever it may be. We don't know about any of that stuff with Profar. But the fact that the deal came through kind of like now versus 2 or 3 months ago means that Profar's asks were probably higher than Atlanta wanted to pay when free agency started. And we were all starved for a signing, because AA always strikes early in free agency and gets the guy or the two guys that he really wants, and then he kind of just lies in wait for prices to come down. Look at last offseason. He signed Ronaldo Lopez very early in the offseason. And he re-signed Joe Jimenez and Pierce Johnson to their deals, and then Atlanta kind of sat back and didn't really do much other than trading some guys away. They traded for Aaron Bummer, making some trades, and then after the initial flurry of movement, they jumped into the Red Sox deal and got Chris Sale. Similar situation here. We got a report that they were in on Jeff Hoffman early in the offseason. Obviously didn't work out because of the shoulder and the medical issues, right? And they obviously wanted Profar. They thought he was the second best free agent bat available, but they were waiting until his price came. I'm guessing either the years, the money, or both came down a little bit to actually make this deal. So Jurickson Profar joining the Atlanta Braves on a 3-year deal. And we got a little bit of info from AA about where he's going to play and how some of the rest of the roster around him will shake out. Let's talk about that next, right here on Braves Today. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Underdog Fantasy. I really love the way that they do this. What's great, you can look at this weekend's sporting events. Let's look at the NFL, for instance. You can create your own lineup using the statistical projections of players playing in this weekend's game. You pick the players that you either want to bet for or against. Maybe maybe you're staying at Josh Allen. Maybe you're a Josh Allen hater. I'm a Josh Allen hater after he cost us our lineup last week. But you go in there, you select your players, you choose over or under on, higher or lower on their statistical projections, right? And then what's great is, depending on how many players you choose, and if you choose higher or lower depending on what their projections are, you can win up to 1,000 times your money. Go to the link in the episode description, promo code BRAVES to sign up. New customers place a deposit, you get a free play, and up to $1,000 in bonus cash. It's available almost the entirety of Braves country. Hate it for you, Mississippi. Everybody else, obviously Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Tennessee, Alabama. If you're in that Highway Patrol commercial on the Braves broadcast, you can participate in Underdog Fantasy. Again, links in the episode description, promo code BRAVES for your chance to win today. Welcome back to Braves Today. Lindsay Crosby talking about the Atlanta Braves signing Jurickson Profar to a 3-year deal on Thursday afternoon. The first major ad that they've made in free agency this winter. And the obvious kind of what's going to happen here is Jurickson Profar is going to play left field. He was a left fielder last year for the Padres. He spent all but I think maybe 18 innings in left. He did play 18 innings at first base. And AA was asked a little bit about what the defense is going to look like with Profar out there and how things are going to go, as well as who's going to play where. And here's a clip. Here's AA first talking about the defense. No, let's not do that. Here's the defensive alignment that AA is expecting them to use next year.
How do you view your corner outfield defense here to start the season before we come back?
Yeah, so look, Jurickson will be playing left, Harris will be playing center, and then we'll have a competition in right field. But, I told Jared, right now knowing Ronald's not going to start, we're going to get him a lot of reps in right field. He's got the range and the arm strength to play all three, and obviously he's played a lot of left field, and he knows he back up in center and so on. But, it doesn't, guys like Brian De La Cruz will come in and compete as well, but he has options, and we'll see if some other guys come into camp, if we bring anybody else in. But, we'll have those two, and it'll be a competition for right field. And Jared will have every opportunity, to be that guy with the defense and the left-handed bat. But he knows that he's going to have to earn it, and Snit will make those calls.
So, to me, parsing out AA's comments, it sounds like Jared Kelenic absolutely is the favorite to be the starter in right field when the season begins, because, again, Ronald Acuña Jr. will not be available, and AA was asked about that pretty early in this press conference and reiterated, doesn't matter necessarily. He's running on Thursday. He was in Truist Park running sprints on the outfield grass. Doesn't matter. He's not going to be on the open day roster. Neither is Spencer Strider. They're going to kind of slow play that a little bit. But Jared Kelenic will have every opportunity to win the starting job. He's going to get extra reps in spring at right field. He will be competing with Brian De La Cruz for that spot. If you kind of look at the rest of the roster, Eli White is also an option. He's a very good defensive outfielder. The bat has never been especially big. He is out of options. So you do have a situation of, depending on who you keep as the final outfielder, right? Is your fourth outfielder Brian De La Cruz or Eli White? If Jared Kelenic wins the job, again, I think he's the favorite. I think we saw last year down the stretch how Laureano played almost every day and Jared Kelenic was on the bench. Whoever's playing the best will get the job. Forrest Wall earned a job out of spring training because he played so well in spring. But Jared Kelenic should be the favorite. You've got Carlos D. Rodriguez on the 40-man roster. He's got 3 options. He probably starts in Gwinnett. Connor Capel's in here as a minor league free agent. He does not have any options. So another guy where you're probably going to end up losing somebody if your starting outfield is, or if your backup outfielder is Brian De La Cruz, because everybody behind him, other than Carlos Rodriguez, doesn't have options. I do think there's a scenario where Eli White makes the roster as a 4th outfielder. He can play defense and then be available if somebody has to miss a day or is hurt. And then Brian De La Cruz gets option to AAA to start the year so that you can kind of work on fixing some of his offensive issues and getting him back to the guy that we know he can be. He does have 2 options left. One of the questions, it did not come up in the press conference, but one of the questions I've already kind of seen on Twitter is, do you have to keep Eli White on the roster to play defense for Jurickson Profar? And AA actually did address this. So Profar doesn't have a ton of experience in left. I guess for his career, he didn't play more than 280 innings in a season in left until 2022, right? He didn't really become an outfielder until 2022. He's played, and even the blue box that they dropped, the press release talked about, he's played almost every single position except for pitcher and catcher, right? He's played first, he's played second, he's played third. He played some shortstop when he first came up. And then obviously he's played all three outfield positions. But AA did discuss the defense of Jurickson Profar. One, he doesn't think he's bad. And two, they've already figured out some things that they want him to work on that they think can make him better. I've got that clip right here.
How good do you feel about, let's say you have Profar in left and Kelnick in right to begin the season?
Yeah, look, I think Kelnick and Harris are pluses, right? I think Profar is very solid in left field. We've identified some things. We think there's still some upside there. We'll see. He knows that. I mentioned to him that we think there's still another level he can get to defensively. He hasn't played that much outfield. Obviously, he came up as an infielder and so on, but we did some work on that, and we'll see. And he's obviously willing to put in the work and the time and all that. So we think there's some upside there. He can get better, but we think he's solid. And we think we've got Gold Glove caliber guys. If Jared's the right fielder, he certainly can play a Gold Glove right field. It's as good an arm as you're going to find. And he's got speed and range and everything else. And obviously, I think Mike will eventually win a Gold Glove. So we feel good about it.
I'm really curious to know what the Braves saw in Jurickson Profar's outfield profile that makes them believe he can be better. And I'm not saying he can't be, but this is one of the areas, things like this are where MLB front offices are so far ahead of whatever we have, right? Like we can look at StatCast and we can see that Jurickson Profar was 9th percentile with a -7 run value in the outfield. That was an improvement over 2023 when he was a -13 run value. Okay. He grades out above average arm strength, 68th percentile. The accuracy isn't quite there. That's why the arm value, which is the ability to actually, hit the throws accurately enough to keep guys from tagging up and scoring or taking extra bases or whatever, is slightly below average. And his range is 7th percentile on StatCast. His speed's also not great, right? It's bottom, it's 26.5 feet per second, which an MLB is below average. But when I kind of glance at this, using the untrained eye and using kind of some of the numbers in StatCast, it looks to me like his reaction time, so his initial reads off the bat, aren't as good as they could be. And then the burst, which is your initial first couple steps that you take when the ball is first hit, that's where he loses some of his ability, right? His routes aren't awful. They're not great, but they're not awful. And I believe that actually some of Ronald's issues come down to reactions and bursts as well, right? Like his first step is the wrong direction, or it's a slow reaction for Ronald. Kind of interesting how Profar is a similar situation to that, just with less speed than Ronald has. But they do think that he can get better in left field. And then obviously, when you have Harris and Kelnick and then Profar, it's not a bad defensive outfield. It's not anywhere near like when you were playing Jorge Soler last year. Chris Sale probably was punching air every time Soler was out there because he had a couple different fly ball outs that became triples because Soler couldn't get to them or couldn't secure the catch or whatever it would have been. Profar's not bad, despite what StatCast might say. And as recently as 2022, he was actually grading out, mostly positively in the outfield. Especially at like preventing extra bases and things like that. So I like the ability of Profar to at least get to average. Obviously, left field has the lowest bar for defense of any of the outfield positions. But I do think the bigger thing to know about Jurickson Profar is he is here to hit the ball. He is here for his offense. And AA had thoughts about that. We'll get to that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsay Crosby talking about the signing of Jurickson Profar to a 3-year deal by the Atlanta Braves. And I'm really, really curious how Atlanta sets up the lineup with Jurickson Profar, because he can do a lot of different things. He's very versatile. You heard AA say he was the second best free agent bat available in their eyes, which is very high praise, because if you think about who was available in free agency, you're saying that it was 1, Juan Soto, and 2, Jurickson Profar. Not Anthony Santander, not Christian Walker, not Pete Alonso, not anybody else. Jurickson Profar. And you got that guy. And you got that guy for not a ton of money, right? $12 million in 2025, $15 million in each of the next two. So here's what AA said about the lineup and where Profar might bat and what Profar brought to the table offensively.
We have a lot of power. There's no doubt about that. But having more left-handed bats, and look, you love the fact that there's no platoon scenario. He is durable. It makes it tough on the other side of the lineup, especially with the different hitters we have. And where I spoke to Snit today about where he thought he would hit him, and that just curious. But we'll see. I mean, especially with Ronald out at the beginning, but he gives you a lot of options. Because he walks, but now he's got some power, makes contact, left, right. Durable, just really changes the complexion of our lineup across the board. And look, if guys get hurt or go down or slump, you're just that much deeper overall.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to play the thing. This is the big deal behind Jurickson Profar.
Why do you like him?
Because he gets on base.
He gets on base. Jurickson Profar's on base last year, 380. That would have been the best on-base percentage on the Atlanta Braves last year. Marcell Ozuna led the team with a 378. The next highest were two guys that played exactly 49 games each. Jorge Soler at 356, Ronald Acuna Jr. at 351. Both of those guys hit somewhere between 243 and 250. Jurickson Profar hit 280. After that, the next regular that comes up is Matt Olson at a 333, and then Austin Riley at a 322, and then Michael Harris at a 304. Jurickson Profar, again, his on base would have led this entire team. His OPS of 839 would have been second among everyday players, right? Marcell Ozuna was first. Jorge Soler was actually second because he hit 9 homers in like 49 games, and he had a decent walk rate. He just really should have been a DH more than anything. But better OPS than Matt Olson and Austin Riley, who were 790 and 783. You heard Snit. He does some of everything. He's a switch hitter. He takes walks. He gets on base. The press release from Atlanta actually talked about this, right? He was in the 90th percentile or better in chase rate, 21.9%, whiff rate, 17%, expected batting average of 282, so he wasn't getting super lucky, and expected weighted on base average of 364. All of those were 90th percentile or better. He had like 4.3 WAR, by the way. I don't think we realize how good of a year Jurickson Profar had. He was 14th place finisher for MVP. That's how good of a year Jurickson Profar had. And you got him for $12 million in 2025. If I'm building a lineup, really you have to think about two. You have to think about the pre-Ronald Acuna Jr. lineup and the post-Ronald Acuna Jr. lineup. But I think either way, I'm batting Jurickson Profar second. I think a lot of your lineup's going to be pretty static, at least early. You're probably leading Michael Harris off. It's a lefty, followed by a switch hitter in Profar. And then you run it back. Austin Riley at 3, Matt Olson at 4, Marcell Ozuna at 5. After that is, I would assume you would want to do Ozzie Albies at 6 and Sean Murphy at 7. That breaks the two righties up with a switch hitter. And then you get Jared Kelenic at 8 as a lefty, and then Orlando Arcia at 9. And fun fact, AA talked about Orlando Arcia in this press conference. It always comes back to Orlando Arcia. And he said that, in essence, the plan last year was to bat him 8th or 9th. And you heard him in that last clip. He alluded to, you're just that much deeper. And that's what he was referring to, was he's another really good hitter you could add to the lineup that makes the lineup deeper, and it lets you bat Orlando Arcia 9th and just really kind of take whatever you can get from Orlando Arcia, right? When Ronald comes back, this becomes a little bit more interesting because you've got to figure out where to put Michael Harris to still break up righties and things like that. So Ronald bats first, Profar second. I still think Profar stays second. Riley third, Olsen fourth, Ozuna fifth. And then it's, do you leave Albies at 6 and put Harris at 7 with Murphy and Arcia back-to-back at 8 and 9? Or do you push either Ozzie or Harris to 8 so that you have a righty followed by a lefty followed by a righty and then back around to Ronald Acuna Jr., who is a righty, right? Do you push some money back to 8? But either way, I don't know why I don't want to put Jurickson Profar leading off. I don't know if I'm just a little bit thrown off by the idea of keeping a static lineup every day. I'm a person who likes the same lineup every day. To the point of, I actually usually track this during the season. Like, how many different distinct lineups, not counting the pitcher, does the team put out every year? 2023 was a lot less than 2024. Just a little fun. I'm a baseball dork. Little fun thing I do. I tweet about it sometimes. It's all it really comes up. But do you put Profar at 1 because he's so good at getting on base and just deal with the fact that he's not as fast as a prototypical leadoff hitter? We've seen that work. Kyle Schwarber's not a fast runner. He also hits more home runs than Profar does. Profar did have 10 steals last year. He did hit double-digit steals last year. But do you lead Profar off and then ask him to move to second when Ronald gets back? Or do you just plug him in at 2 and let him stay at 2 and move whoever is the leadoff hitter? Maybe it's Ozzie Albies, maybe it's Michael Harris. Move that person down when Ronald comes back. I'm really curious to see what Snit does with that. We'll probably be tracking that during spring. I'll probably put it in the newsletter and just kind of like for fun, track to see when they have the full lineup, which isn't that often, where does everybody bat? Also want to hear from you. Do you like this signing? Where do you think Jurickson Profar should hit? Do you think they should go out and try to make another signing or not? There was a little funny moment with Justin Toscano asking AA how much salary space they had left, and AA said X number of millions. He wouldn't actually give a number. He said X number of millions because, like always, they're looking for opportunities. It has to be the right opportunity to present itself, blah, 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 blah. But if we look at the fact we haven't really talked about the money situation, Atlanta's at $230 million projected on a CBT payroll with a first threshold of $241. If you're keeping money available for ads in season, like they always do, they like to hold back $5-6 million or so for that. You've only got about $3 or $4 million left, unless you're trading for somebody and the other team is taking most of their salary, which you did when you got Chris Sale last offseason. Unless you're doing that, you're probably in a situation where you're maybe at best adding a reliever. Do you think Atlanta should just be done and hold all $10 million to have more money available? Do you think they should blow past the CBT if they can find a great deal on something like maybe they trade for a Dylan Cease or somebody? What do you think Atlanta should do? Let me know. I'm on Twitter at Crosby Baseball. Show's on Twitter, Braves_today. You can email us, contact@bravestoday.com. Until next time, this has been Braves Today.